The first two verses in today's gospel reading are very important. They imply something that many people, if not most people, will utter at some point in their life. So let's take a look at the first two verses, verse 24 and 25 of the 6th chapter of John. Now, the two verses say this: when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves got into the boats and came to Capernaum looking for Jesus. And when they found them across the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Now, when you look at those two verses, what you have to think is this: from the point of time when the crowd could not find Jesus until the point of time when they finally found Jesus across the sea, what were they thinking? What were they saying to themselves? Any idea? They realized Jesus isn't there, so they want Jesus to be there. So what were they saying? Well, they were saying this. Let's take a look. "Jesus, where are you?" Now, it turns out to be that those are very powerful words. There's a very good chance that many of you, maybe not all of you, but many of you, if you've gone through some style of tragedy, some style of unexpected tragedy, something has happened in your life that is incomprehensible, there's a very good chance in the thickness of your pain you have yelled out, "Jesus, where are you?" When I was a young priest, I was only a priest 2 months old. One of the assignments I was given was to serve for all the night calls that would occur, the emergency night calls that would occur at the Westmoreland Hospital in Greensburg. So I said to myself when they gave me that assignment, there can't be many of those. I was wrong. There were many of those. Now, this one night I get called out. I'm only a priest about 2 months. I get down to the hospital. I enter the emergency waiting room, and there's a young mother and a young father there. And they approached me and they shared with me what happened. That their 8-month-old daughter had just died. And they told me that their daughter was born with all style of health issues. And those health issues just continued to mount and worsen and mount and get bad, and eventually it took the little gal's life that night. They asked if I would go to the room and pray with them and for that little child. Sure. So we went to the room. And Mom and Dad, this young mother and father, were around the bed, and there's this little 8-month little angel. And I'm praying for the little angel, anointing the little angel. And in the middle of my prayer, the father yells out, "Jesus, where are you?" His pain had to be so intense. The loneliness of wondering, how could this have happened to my little baby? 8 months old, just look at that little thing. It's only about that long. How could my baby have died? Jesus, where are you? I don't know where you're at, but I know this much. You're not in this room tonight. You weren't with my daughter as she was approaching death, because if you were, she would have gotten better. Jesus, where are you? Now, after I prayed for the child and I spent some time with Mom and Dad, it was now time for me to leave. And these young parents said to me, "You know, Father, we really aren't that religious. We asked the nurse at the emergency room when our little baby died if she could find a minister, someone to come and offer prayer. We're glad that you did. But now you're the only person we know, the only priest minister we know. Can you do us a favor? Can you do the funeral for our little baby in just a couple days?" "Sure," I said to them. A couple days later, I went to the funeral home to offer the prayers, the funeral for this little precious little baby. When I got to the funeral home, the funeral director said, "We're ready to go." So I entered the room and I went to the wall in which everyone was facing, and I went to look for the casket. I couldn't find the casket. Now I went back out and I said to the funeral director, "There's no casket. Where's the casket?" Because I'm supposed to stand in front of the casket looking at the people. You see, I made a big mistake in 2 months being a priest. I went looking for a casket that's typically 7 feet long. How can you miss a casket inside of a room? And the funeral director said to me, "Father, it's a baby's casket." I never thought of that. I didn't know there were baby caskets. And a baby casket, just to look at one, will break your heart. They're only about 3 feet long. They're about 2 feet wide, about 18 inches high. So I went back into the room, and there it was, just like he said it would be, right next to some flowers, this little baby casket. And when I entered the room, and I walked up to the casket, I looked inside, and I saw that little baby, and literally at that point, I broke down. I have the book, and I need to turn around and start this service, but I can't. I'm standing there at the casket looking at this little baby, and I'm just tearing up. So I ran off to the men's room. I'm in a men's room trying to regain my composure, and I'm throwing water on my face. As I look in the mirror, and there's my face, I can see the men's room door open, and entering the men's room, the father, the dad of that little baby. And I said to myself, oh, he's going to be mad. He's coming over to me, and I'm sure he's mad. He's got to be so upset with me. And I don't blame him. He walked over to me, and he got his hands, and he hugged my shoulders. And he gives me a big squeeze, and I looked at him, I said, are you mad? No. Why would I be mad? Because I just muffed it. I ran off. I'm supposed to do the prayers. He said, Father Ken, who could do those prayers? No one in that room can do what you need to do. I'm not mad. I'm honored. I'm honored that my daughter affected you in the way that she did. No, I'm not mad. And then he said to me, come back out. We can do this together. You can do it. I'll be there with you. So I patted my face off from the water and checked out my hair and got myself recomposed and freshened up my nose, and then we went back out. Now, when I got back out, there's the dad sitting right in front, right next to his wife, mom and dad. And the most amazing thing happened. I start the prayers, and his dad has a little smile on his face. He got his hand right in front of his chest, and he puts his thumb up like this. And he starts to mumble the words, you can do it. You can do it. So I start the prayers. He got this really pleasant smile, and he keeps going like this so no one can see. And he keeps mumbling, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And I'm going right through the prayers, and I start the homily, which I was afraid to do for the 2 days prior to that. He keeps going like this, and he's giving me all the courage, and I'm just firing away, and it's just working for me. After the funeral, which worked out really well, I went to the meal afterward. And after the meal, I got back to the rectory. And I still felt inadequate. I still felt really bad for what happened earlier. So I thought to myself, a couple hours later, I'm going to drive out to see the family. When I got there, no one else was at home except mom and dad. And so they invited me into the house, and we went to the kitchen table and made me some coffee, and we're sitting around. And I said, I'll tell you what, I came here just to really apologize for my meltdown earlier. And this is what the Father said to me. It reminds me of those words. He said to me, Father Ken, when my baby died, when she died, I started to pray to God, God help me to get through that funeral. I don't know how I'm going to get through the funeral. And guess what? God answered my prayers. And I said to him, how did God answer your prayers to allow you to get through that funeral? He said, because I spent the whole time going through that funeral, trying to get you through the funeral, and God got me through the funeral. He answered my prayers. And I looked at him and I said, so that actually means you set me up. And he said, that's right. You never had a chance. I didn't realize God was going to answer my prayers because I kept saying, Jesus, where are you? I thought he abandoned me. I thought he left. And I didn't realize he would effectively answer my prayers, that he would allow me to focus so much on you that I was able to get through that funeral. And I said to myself, that's absolutely amazing. Now, there's a lot of people up to this point already. I'm sure a lot of folks at Mass this morning, you have asked that question, Jesus, where are you? in the throes of whatever pain you have gone through, the loss of a child, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a parent, the loss of a sibling, the loss of health, I'm sure you have said, Jesus, where are you? And if you're saying right now that you have never said those words, and if God gives you substantially longer life, then eventually you will. Because every human being, when they go through some solid difficulty, and they look, as that crowd looked to find Jesus, and they can't find him because they think he abandoned them, eventually they will ask that question, Jesus, where are you? They will ask that question in the middle of family or in the darkness of a bedroom. Jesus, where are you? Because I don't feel you now. You left, and I got to go find you. What I discovered that day as a young priest is that when that father yelled out when I was praying for their child, Jesus, where are you? Jesus never left. He was right there in that room. He couldn't feel him because he wasn't looking for him. He was convinced that he left. But Jesus was there the whole time. And all he had to do was say, Jesus, help me get through that funeral. And Jesus said, okay, I'm going to use the priest to help you get through that funeral. And that's what he did. Without my knowing it, I became God's instrument. He was working through me to allow me to have a meltdown so that Father would get me through the funeral by going like this. You can do it. You can do it. If you're going through a pain right now, if you've asked that question, Jesus, where are you? You might be asking that question this morning. You might have woke up this morning and then remembered the pain that you're going through. You might have asked that question, Jesus, where are you? All you got to know is this, that he has never left you. He is right there. He's right by your side. I learned that when I was a priest just 2 months. And when you ask that question, Jesus, where are you? All you got to do is follow up with the next question. Jesus, help me get through this. And he will. And the strangest of ways, he will. He'll get you through whatever difficulty you're facing and trying to travel through. Jesus will never leave you alone. He'll never leave you abandoned. So when you ask that question, Jesus, where are you? Just know that he's standing right next to you. And when you ask Jesus, help me, he will. But in the strangest of ways.